Welcome to week 5, session 2. In this session, we will look at the question whether or not demand and supply produce an outcome that is desirable from the society's point of view. That is, does the market give us the maximum possible social well-being? This session answers that question. We are going to use the tool of welfare economics, which is the study of how society's allocation of resources affects economic well-being. We measure the benefits that the buyers and sellers receive from taking part in a market, and we will discover that the equilibrium price and quantity in a market maximizes the total benefits received by sellers and buyers. Consumer surplus measures the benefits received by buyers from participating in a market. Consumer surplus is the amount that a buyer is willing to pay for a good minus the amount he actually pays. The demand curve represents buyers' willingness to pay. The area underneath the demand curve is the total value that consumers get from consumption. The area under the demand curve but above the market price represents consumer surplus. If market price falls, consumer surplus will increase by the area under the demand curve and above the price will increase. A rise in consumer surplus means that consumers' economic welfare has increased. Producer surplus measures the benefits received by sellers from participating in a market. Producer surplus is the amount that a seller is paid for a good minus the cost of production. That is, producer surplus is the excess that the seller receives beyond his or her opportunity cost of providing the good or service. The supply curve reflects the seller's cost of production. That is the area below the supply curve. Producer surplus is the area above the supply curve and below the price of a good. If market price rises, producer surplus increases by the area above the supply curve and below the price will increase. A rise in producer surplus means that sellers' economic welfare has increased. We measure economic well-being with total surplus. That is the sum of consumer and producer surplus. Total surplus is the area below the demand curve and above the supply curve. Resource allocation is said to be the efficient if total surplus is maximized. The free market equilibrium price and quantity is efficient because it maximizes total surplus. If society produces less than the equilibrium quantity, we fail to produce goods where the value to the buyers exceed to the producers. If society produces more than the equilibrium quantity, we produce goods where the cost to sellers exceeds the value to buyers. Competitive markets are efficient, meaning that the allocation of resources maximizes total surplus. Before we start analyzing tutorial questions from session 2, we need to remember to follow some steps. Step number 1, to draw the diagram. Step 2, label the diagram. Step 3, fill in the table. Before, after, and what are the changes? When tax is imposed in the market for cars, the market for cars shrinks from Q1 to Q2. Both buyers and sellers share the burden of tax. Buyers are paying more from P1 to PB. Sellers are receiving less from P1 to PS. The table shows the effect of tax on the market for cars. Buyers were paying before the tax P1. After the tax, it increased to P1. Therefore, the change is increased. For sellers who are paying before the tax P1, after the tax, they are receiving less. Therefore, the change decreases. Quantity before the tax was Q1. After the tax, market shrinked to Q2. Therefore, the change is decreased. Consumer surplus is the area below the demand curve above the price. Before the tax, the area was A plus B plus C. After the tax, the only area left is area A. Therefore, the change is negative B plus C. Producer surplus is the area below the price above the supply curve. Therefore, before the tax, the area D plus E plus F was the producer surplus. After the tax, the only area left is area F. Therefore, the change is negative D plus E. Government revenue before the tax, since there was no tax, it is 0. After the tax, government revenue is the area B plus D. Therefore, the government revenue is positive with the area B plus D. Deadweight loss before the tax was 0 because market was efficient at the equilibrium point. But after, the area C plus E is a dead weight loss area. Therefore, the change is positive. And we add up the total surplus before the tax is area A plus B plus C plus D plus E plus F. And after the tax, the area C plus E is subtracted, is deducted, because that area is a dead weight loss. When the tax on each car sold increased from $1,000 to $2,000, the market for cars shrinked further from Q1 to Q2. Buyers paid more, sellers received less, which means buyers were paying more from PB1 to PB2, and sellers were receiving less from PS1 to PS2. The table shows the change from lower tax to higher tax and how it affected the market efficiency. The total change in government revenue is equal to B plus F negative E, which could be positive or negative, as you can see in the revenue B plus F minus E. The change in dead waste loss is positive, as it increases by the area C plus E plus G, meaning that the economy as a whole is worse off. Resources are getting wasted.